Breathe by Schwegel. Chapter 1. The Regression. Once upon a time in a kingdom far, far away. Yep, this is going to seem like a fairy tale, one imagined by the greatest storyteller of all times. It will seem unlikely, and as I unfold this unbelievable tale, if there are times you don't question my sanity, I may question yours. Despite the question of sanity in either party, the experience I'm about to share is as accurate as I can share from what I believe to be a rational, grounded mind. I'm not embellishing, padding, or using creative license to create a better tale. I'm simply sharing this experience as I have remembered it. Believe it or not. I've been led through one past life regression in my life. This was in 2008 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I've been going through a particularly difficult experience, and because I gravitate toward natural healing, I was seeking assistance from an energy healer, who I will call Angela. Angela would do Reiki on me and help me release painful emotion from the experience I had been moving through. Throughout our work together, she kept insisting that I allow her to do a past life regression with me. She'd say things like, "Whatever's in your past life is still affecting you in this one. We need to uncover what this is." I was unsure about this because something inside of me would say, "Run," every time she suggested it. Despite my internal fear, I eventually relented. And it is here where this experience begins. Well, in this lifetime at least. On the day of the regression, I remember feeling a powerful aversion to it. Everything inside of me was fearful. However, there was also something inside of me that knew that I had to go through with it. I had an internal knowing that I was going to hear a deep, painful truth about myself that I never wanted to face. This deep aversion was at its most powerful as I sat in Angela's office. Her office seemed cold to me on that day. No warmth of the sun was peering through the windows, and the once lively colors seemed gray and drab. It was as though I was waiting for this doom of truth to crash over me like some ill-fated tsunami, and it was infiltrating all of my senses. I imagined bolting for the door multiple times, and remember almost canceling at the last moment. As fate would have it, this did not happen. "In front of you are some stairs. Can you describe them to me?" Angela's voice was coming through my regressed state, guiding me. But I was already at the stairs before she suggested that they be there. I still recall very specifically that moment. I was looking down at these stone stairs, moss and earth staining their edges. Time and history forming each stone into its own history, its own story. Although it felt cold and damp, I did not feel as though I was unwelcome. It was more as though it represented my unmistakable passing from one world to another. "I will guide you down each step," Angela was saying. "Take a step down as I count down from 10 to 1. 10, 9. I recall it feeling a bit cramped, like I was going down a dark tunnel. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a door. It was wooden with heavy metal fixtures, and as I think back now, it reminds me of something out of Grimm's fairy tales. The type of door that undoubtedly had some wrinkly, cackling old witch on the other side, devising a devious plan to eat me for dinner. As I was opening the door, I heard Angela say, "Can you look down at your shoes?" I heard myself answer, "Yes." "What do they look like?" "Well, they're like light blue flats. They have gold detail around the trim." "And what are you wearing?" "A blue dress." All I could see were my shoes and the bottom of my mid-calf length dress, and that I was standing on stone. In front of me was a very large stone house and another door. I knew Angela was guiding me, but I vaguely remember her speaking at this point in the regression. In this other world, I opened the door, and I walked into a grand entryway. In front of me, there was a hallway, and slightly to the left was a staircase I comfortably began to ascend. I knew this house was mine, and that in this time that I was visiting, I was 17 years old. I knew who I was in present day, age 38 in the year 2008, but I simultaneously knew who I was in that lifetime. I knew every detail of that house, where the servants were, what it felt like, what it smelled like. When I got almost to the top of the stairs, I knew that there was a room to my left. This was my mother's sewing room, and I knew she spent most of her time in there. I was suddenly in this room as though there was a swift movement to my left, and there I was. My mother was sitting in her chair in the center of the room. There was a fire going, and the room was warm. What hit me was not the warmth of the room, but the feeling of her profound sadness. It's almost impossible to describe the depth to this sadness. I have never felt anything so full of sorrow in my current lifetime, and I hope I never do again. The sadness overwhelmed me, flowing over me like a dark prison. I did not, at the time, know the cause of her sadness. I just felt it. I also knew that this mother, from this lifetime long ago, was my current mother now. It's strange, but in that moment, feeling her pain, I knew I couldn't help her. Not in that lifetime and not in this. I backed out of the room. I was feeling myself being pulled up the rest of the stairs. Perhaps it was Angela guiding me out, I don't know. I just remember backing out and walking to the top of the stairs. At the top of the stairs, I turned to face a hallway on the right. And as I was facing that hallway, I saw another long hallway coming out of the left. I knew that this was the servants' areas, and also that there was some sort of carriage house below. I felt that pulling again, drawing me to walk down the hallway I was facing on the right. But before I could proceed, a little boy came up to me out of the left hallway, riding a small wooden trike. I knew he was 3 years old. He had a head of dark curly hair and a playful spirit. I remember feeling that he was my brother in that lifetime, and just as I knew my mother in that lifetime was my mother now, I knew this little boy from that lifetime was my father in this lifetime now. He seemed to know me, and also seemed to giggle when he saw me. I felt he wanted me to play with him, but again, I was pulled to move on. As I turned to leave, I felt his disappointment, as though this had happened all too often. I felt a tinge of all too familiar guilt creep in as I moved on. I turned to my right and walked a short distance down that hallway. I came to a door on the left. I remember just standing there in front of this door, staring at it. I knew this 17-year-old me was on the other side of that door and that I did not want to go in. At this point, I became conscious of Angela's saying to open the door, and me responding with a trembling lip, "I don't want to." She kept insisting that I needed to see what was on the other side of that door. I remember shaking my head, crying now, saying, "I can't. I don't want to." And her patient insisting. I don't know how long it took me, but it eventually, reluctantly, I opened it. What I saw beyond the door sickened me. There were two people in a large wooden four-poster bed, an older man and a younger girl. They were nude and engaged in a very consensual sexual experience. I could hear them laughing, and I saw the long, slender legs of the girl. I knew the girl was me at age 17 in that lifetime, and the other person was my father. grandfather from that lifetime. The shock and horror pulled me back and out of that room. I never saw the face of my then father, or if he was someone to me in this lifetime. I just felt his presence. I could hear myself in present time crying in Angela's office and feeling the shame of what I had seen. Still in the regression, I remember that I very quickly went down the stairs to the kitchen, which was through the hallway I had seen in the front entryway. A cook was in the kitchen. She was comforting and kind. I remember feeling she was my grandmother in this lifetime, on my mother's side. The kitchen felt like it was my place of comfort and refuge in that life. I liked it there. I felt safe and supported, like I could come here to talk and to be understood. The cook recognized me immediately and smiled. The feeling of the upstairs disgust felt instantly eased. A man, a gardener, came in the kitchen door, and as instantly as I knew the cook was my grandmother, I knew the gardener was my grandfather, my mother's father in this lifetime. At that time, I didn't process this, but later reflected how our lifetimes are such tangled webs. There in that long ago lifetime were my this lifetime mother, father, my mother's father, and mother. We were all there in that lifetime together, living out some karmic role-playing. I remember questioning whether my three sisters, my daughter, my father's parents were somehow in that lifetime too. I wonder, still today, about our tangled webs of time, lessons, lives, and deaths. Do the same players continue to show up as different characters in different lifetimes? Before I could process the kitchen scene further, I was suddenly flying out the kitchen door, past the gardener grandfather figure. It was as though, as he opened the door, the air sucked me out into a fast-flowing breeze. As I flew, I saw in front of me hills scattering over the landscape. There were not many houses at all, mostly just green, lush, rolling hills, and I felt like I was perhaps in France, but I knew that that wasn't quite right. I also sensed that the year was around 1602. As I flew toward the hills, I suddenly curved sharply right and then swooped down a curved road. As soon as I got to the bottom, I turned a bit right, then left, and went into the green hilly area. It is here that I stopped flying and went into another stone house. This one was not grand like my previous stone house. This was a modest home, small and more reasonable in size. I don't recall that much about the exterior because it was what was in the interior that was significant. I instantly knew that this was the home of my husband and I in that lifetime. I had somehow flown forward many years, but still remained in the same lifetime. I quickly flew in the front door and found my former self in a bed at the back of the house. I was age 55, and I was dying. I instantly knew that in that lifetime, I had died of a coughing disease, and that the moment that I flew into was the former me near my time of death. There were people around me, including my concerned and devastated husband. And it's at this point I came back from the regression. Back in the room with Angela, I opened my eyes that were full of tears. I was very shaken. Everything had been so real, so much detail. I recall just wanting desperately to leave. I wanted to hide from all the pain of that lifetime. I felt sick, sad, shocked. I exchanged some comments with Angela about my experience, but I couldn't say what. I just wanted to leave. After I left her office, I never contacted her again. I never wanted to go back
back to that office, back to the regressions, back to that time. For years after, I worked to repress the memory of my regression. For each time it came to the forefront of my mind, I felt sick. I felt guilty and shameful and wrong. Despite my best efforts at pushing it away, I could always feel it there, looming in the background. I had frequent, sickening flashes of the memory of seeing myself and my past life father in that room together. Each time it would come in, I would push it away, not wanting to remember or feel anything about it. My rational mind even questioned whether this was some type of psychosis or transference where I was molested in this lifetime, suppressed it, and it somehow came out during this past life regression? No, I can say this with confident certainty. There has been nothing in my current lifetime's childhood or teen years that my father, or any other man for that matter, has done to harm me, take advantage of, or engage me in sexually that would cause the feeling of utter shame that this past life regression had invoked. No, those dreadful feelings were not from this lifetime. It would take years for me to uncover why the shame was so very profound and what it was doing showing up here in this lifetime. As I speak these words, I'm currently experiencing why that shame was so very profound and why it showed up in this lifetime. For me, the reality of what I've shared so far and what I'm about to share with you is not so far-fetched. So many people scoff at past lives, regression, near-death experiences, and the like. What's interesting to me is there is countless anecdotal evidence of past life memories that come from normal, grounded, respectable people, many with verifiable information remembered that could not be fabricated or researched prior to the memory, yet somehow it seems so unbelievable. I guess that if we have evidence that past lives exist, many would have to change their belief about life, and that's way too frightening for most. As I said, for me, it is not so far-fetched. I remember the first time reality moved into what seemed like a non-reality to me. When I was 6 years old, my parents had had a party. It was not typical for them to have parties, so when I woke up early in the morning, before my parents and sisters woke, I was finding myself unbalanced by all the strange energy in the house. I felt so dizzy from all the static in the air. As soon as I did this, a strange thing started happening. I found myself in this unsettling experience of perspective shifting. One moment I was in my body, and the next I was out in the universe, experiencing me as this teeny tiny speck. And then, quick as a flash, I'd be back in my body. Then I would find myself inside of the smallest part of my atoms, viewing myself as extremely large. And then, quick as a flash, back in my normal body. This kept going on and on. In, out, in, inside, in, out, in, inside, in. I remember feeling so overwhelmed, as though if I could not stop the shifting, I might blow up or disappear forever into one of those perspectives. In, out, inside, in. I remember screaming inside of me, "Stop!" And as quickly as it had started, it stopped. Breathing hard, I got up and walked to where the drinks had been organized the night before, and I started drinking all of the water out of a royal blue ice dish. I will never forget that dish, and how that no longer icy water calmed and grounded me. What I had experienced at that moment was my first of many surreal, extrasensory experiences, which to this day never cease to shock and astound me. It was soon after this out-of-body experience that I realized that I was speaking to someone I couldn't see. I think for a while I thought this was normal, but by the time I was about 8, I was completely conscious that these conversations were definitely not normal.
I unsuccessfully tried to tell my sisters that I spoke to someone who told me things about people in life, but they did not believe me. So I just stopped speaking of it. When I was 13, I realized the person I was mostly speaking to was my great grandmother, Genevieve. We continued to speak throughout the years. She was always positive in nature, kind, and would only tell me things to teach me, guide me, or warn me. By the time I was 19, I'd had my first premonition and vision, which kicked open a door to an endless and constant stream of wonderfully weird paranormal experiences that have not ceased to this day. As far back as I can remember, I had a deep sadness inside of me. This was coupled with an equally deep feeling like somehow there was just something innately wrong with me. I had beautiful parents and a nice upbringing, so I could never figure out where it came from. But regardless, it was always there. Seeing visions, having out of body experiences, and speaking to someone I could not see physically was just one more way in which I was different, wrong, and weird. Because of this, I tried so very hard to just be normal. In my 20s and 30s, I earned 3 university degrees, got married, had a child, and tried to live a settled, normal life. Despite my best efforts, however, this attempt at normalcy could never last. I could not stop the visions, the paranormal experiences, or all the other experiences that came after that. I was not normal, and living the white picket fence life was not sustainable for me. Seeing inside of people's bodies medically, speaking to animals, seeing visions of what needs to heal in others, psychically reading people through pictures, remote viewing, channeling from the other side, feeling what others are thinking or feeling, and getting flashes of other past lives I've had without any regression needed from another person, took me far off into a different way of existing. Although I always somewhat tried to feign some semblance of normalcy, it never really worked. I was just not normal material. At the age of 44, I realized that this weirdness I tried so hard to hide from others was not something to be ashamed of. On the contrary, it was a gift. It was a gift I was finally ready to embrace fully. In 2011, I left my career as an educational trainer and developer and moved from Wisconsin to California to open a holistic healing center and embrace the gift of clairvoyance that I now feel I was blessed to be given. Upon making that decision, Genevieve seemed to fade into the background and a whole new set of spirit guides moved into my consciousness. They gave me deeper insight into people and life and unveiled more complex information about life and existence. I affectionately call these otherworldly teachers my guides. Many people ask me who they are, and that is a very difficult question to answer. There are times I'll get a specific answer like Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Ezekiel, an unnamed Native American who shows up to help people heal emotionally. And then there's Jesus and Mother Mary, who have shown up at different times as well. However, the main guides I speak to are God and my higher self. Although having said that, since I clairvoyantly tap into universal consciousness, we all seem to be rolled into one conscious voice anyway, so it's really hard to distinguish a specific voice or being. Hence, why I call this universal collective voice my guides. Since the time I moved to California, I had worked with thousands of people, helping them heal, guiding them, teaching them, training them, or inspiring them to become the best them they could be. I have fully accepted who I am, what I do, my communication from the other side, and stay as grounded, normal, and practical as I can throughout all of it. To me, the experience I'm unfolding for you is just one in a line of many unbelievable experiences. But this one holds a particular significance for me. and is frankly just a really cool story to tell. End of chapter 1.